It's hot as hell outside here in New York today, and real talk, I feel like that dude from Indiana Jones who just opened the Ark of the Covenant and his face melts. Yeah, hashtag climate change. So for today's episode, we're gonna do something cool, like another 5 tips episode. Let's go. So for today's 5 tips, it's going to be all about making better buildups. Buildups are all about tension, and well, ultimately all music's about tension. Buildups in particular are all about building tension over an extended amount of time to ultimately lead to that amazing drop. So here are my top 5 tips. All right, so tip number 1, use triplets. So using triplet drums with non-triplet drums brings tension because you're shifting time. Often with tension, it's all about highs versus lows, loud versus soft, fast versus slow. But shifting time with triplets, going from quarter notes to 6th notes to 8th notes, speeds up in a way that is unexpected. I particularly like to do this, when I shift from like 8th notes to 1/12 notes, specifically in some of my buildups. So I'm here in Ableton, I'm using a build that I made in another video, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm talking about with these 5 tips. So for this kick drum, you're going to go ahead and hear how it shifts from non-triplet to triplet time. Did you hear how adding the triplets there at the end really cranks up the tension? Let's go ahead and add in the snare and the clap, the rim, and yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So as you heard, the separation between the triplets and the non-triplet drums really adds that tension, and then it resolves it there in the end where everything comes in with the triplets. All right, so tip number 2, fills. Now, fills are an important capstone to your build as it falls into the drop, just like there are really no hard and fast rules to all of this. This is a general rule of thumb. That said, I'm sure you could find plenty of examples where this is not the case, but it tends to happen more often than not. So try with and without when you write your builds to see which sounds better in context, because that will ultimately be the deciding factor. Now, if you can't think of a fill and you own a copy of Logic, there's actually a really awesome tool called Drummer in Logic that you can go ahead and record and then export what you have built in that smart drummer as MIDI and open it up another channel where you can go ahead then and add your own drums. Now, I talked about this in another video, so if you're interested, go ahead and check out that video. In this particular build, I use a very basic fill, which is just a glass breaking and then a reverse glass breaking. Sounds like this. So I left a little space here, right here at the end, right before when my drop would hit. Finishes off the build and the drums and the risers right here, and then it goes ahead and has this empty space that simultaneously builds tension as well as releases. Now I went ahead and partnered that with a vocal drop that you can see right here. Let's go ahead and check that out. All right, so tip number 3, reversing sounds. As you heard, I went ahead and reversed this glass break, but I also reversed things like this clap. So it was just a clap, the transient was right here, and by reversing it, it also helped build that tension here. Check this out. So this clap was initially this clap with a lot of reverb, and then I reversed it, and I can use it then to help kind of build that tension. I also did the same over here to a breath noise. It's got some side chain on it, and then when we reverse it, as you'll notice with a lot of the sounds in this build-up, everything starts either slow or quiet, and then builds its tension through speed or loudness. All right, so tip number 4, use tonal risers. Rising in pitch is a super useful way in heightening tension. You can do this with pitch bending a sample or a loop from the verse, or use a serum patch and bend it up, perhaps with some reverb and side chaining. If you have a vocal sample, you can also pitch bend it up as it repeats, which is perfect. In this track, I went ahead and I believe that this sample right here is kind of a tonal sound. Yeah, so it's kind of tonal, but it's also got some texture. Now, I went ahead and this particular sample I took from Splice, and then you have a tonal sample that I went ahead and pulled from a cymatic sample pack. You can hear it right here. I really like that sample because it was almost like one, it's got, I think, like 3 or 4 different layers. One layer that kind of maintains, as well as a layer that rises and a layer that falls. And that separation of sound, it really builds really good tension. So you don't just have to apply a pitch shift to tonal sounds. You can actually also do it to sounds that are typically atonal, like a snare. So you can hear how there's this pitch bend on it. Really slight amount of tonal rising, but it's subtle and it's very nice. So I went ahead, I found a cymatics sample, did a little fill sort of thing right here halfway through this build, and then really sped it up right here and pitched it up. So you can go ahead and hear what that sounds like. Nostalgia knocks when I'm not sober. Wake me up when it's all over. That little fill. But honestly, really mess around with different pieces of your track. And if you're struggling to find a tonal riser that you really like that fits the sound of your song, it's really easy to create these risers in something like Serum. So all you need to do is create a MIDI patch and open up your Serum patch, turn on 1, maybe 2 of the oscillators depending on what you're trying to do, raise the pitch bend up 12 semitones, which is 1 octave, and then have it set for -12. That way you can pitch bend the entire length. Go ahead and adjust the settings that you feel are necessary. I added some distortion, some reverb, and a little EQ. I also added a filter here just to take down some of the highs. I went ahead and also put a sidechain compression on it, sidechain it to the kick. That way it kind of adds a little pumping sound and gives a little bit of character to the riser. Go into your envelope and adjust the MIDI control from -12 to +12. And you could even, if you wanted to, put a little breakpoint right here and adjust kind of whether or not it's linear or if there's an exponential bend or whatnot. And this is what it ends up sounding like. This is what it sounds like by itself. I don't know if you heard that little reverb tail. What I would normally do then is render this to audio and cut off that reverb tail because I really just want these particular sounds here in this this fill section. So vocals are great when it comes to pitch shifting, but honestly check out any of the samples in your track to see if the pitch shifting sounds good because ultimately it's all going to come down to context. And finally, tip number 5, blending. Make sure to build cohesiveness between the verse and the drop by using pieces from the verse or pieces from the drop within your buildup. You don't want the buildup to stand by itself. You want to take stuff from earlier in the verse or later in the drop and kind of tease it out here in this build. Now for this particular build, since I don't have a drop built up right now, I just have kind of this vocal being teased throughout the buildup to help build that tension. But perhaps you've got some pads in your drop, or you have, a synth or a lead or, some sort of melody or motif that you want to go ahead and kind of tease out here in this buildup. That's really useful, and that's really a good way of kind of building that cohesiveness and blending between the verse and the drop. So this is what the entire build sounds like with the vocal sample from the where there would be a verse through to the fill right here at the end. It's a pretty simple build. It doesn't have a whole lot going on it right now. If I had a full song here, I would be taking pieces of it and kind of layering it in, probably adding a bit more effects, perhaps some processing. Nostalgia knocks when I'm not sober. Wake me up when it's all over. probably the best way to get better at building better builds is to study builds that you really, really like. I'd say download some builds from Splice, or take some builds from the favorite sample packs that you have and import them into something like Ableton. Really try to analyze what's going on, what are the different instruments that are being used, what kind of tones are being used, how are they being manipulated to build tension, and really try to recreate those, if you can. That's the best way that I have found to learn to better builds. There's also plenty of resources online between ADSR and Cymatics and YouTube to go ahead and help you get better as well too. In fact, I did a Twitch stream earlier in this channel, if you want to go ahead and check it out, where I actually built this build from scratch based off of a reference track that I had from a track that I did a while ago. I tried to build it from scratch. So check that out. I kind of talked through my process. It's really, really long, but I think it's worth watching. As always, check out the rest of the tutorials on our channel. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay updated for future tutorial releases. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. Leave a comment, like this video to go ahead and be entered into a giveaway that we're going to go ahead and do at the end of August. All the rules to that giveaway were discussed in our last tutorial, so go ahead and check out our last tutorial, or if you want to read about it, you can check them out in the description box below. And if you're in NYC, make sure to stay hydrated. Peace.